Hi, this is Fenland Chatter, and today we're talking to Julia Sinclair-Brown. How are you today?
Hi there, David. Yeah, I'm Julia Sinclair-Brown, and I'm a bereavement coach and trainer.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear from you, and hopefully we'll learn a lot about you and your project and your coursework. So can you just give us just tell us who you are and a bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, of course. Yes. Well, I've had a mixed bag sort of background. I started out originally in working in the holistic field. I qualified as a counsellor, aromatherapist, and sort of went down that therapeutic line of work. But then moved into a more corporate business setting and worked in HR, learning and development, training. And my life sort of changed a bit, particularly when I left London. I had a son, and I started working from home as a career coach. And it was during this time when my son was actually very young that I started to lose close family members. It was a 5-year period where I just had a series of bereavements. It was a really, really difficult time for me. And I recognized that I wasn't coping. After trying to ignore it, I recognized that I really had to address it. And I did, and I started therapy for myself and really went on a journey of healing, I would say, from grief. And I sort of carried on and felt at this time that maybe there was something I wanted to do in this field of supporting others who've been through grief, but actually pushed that away for quite a long time and just carried on with my career work. And then it was only a couple of years ago when my dad actually became very ill, had a serious fall, and took some time off, and I started writing what was to originally be a book, but it then became a course. I decided I was going to write a course in bereavement where I could support people with something that they could do in their own time at home, to help them through the early days, weeks, months when grief can be, well, when it's so raw, it's so painful, and when we probably then need the most help. And so I've been working on that course, and very excited that that'll be coming out later on this year. Um, in the meantime, I also set up my business Evolvida, where I offer one-to-one bereavement therapy, coaching style to my clients. And actually, I have to say, in this period of lockdown, I've also taken a bit of time out to reflect on what I want to do next with my business, whether I want to carry on doing the one-to-ones or take it in a different avenue. And something that really has expired for me, and I've done quite a bit of research on this, has been that I think a lot of employers are struggling to know how to deal with people who are bereaved. And what highlighted that has been the pandemic. And there is more grief and loss around in a more, I mean, that also in a generic way besides bereavement itself. But speaking to people, doing some research, I realised I think there's a real gap. And whilst lots of employers are really understanding the benefits of good mental health now in the workplace and seeing the importance of keeping their staff well, I still think there's not enough around the area of grief. And that's probably because, well, I'd say largely we are in a grief-averse culture. People don't like to talk about it. So when it happens, nobody really knows how to handle it. So I've decided that I think that is something that will be very much needed by employers, not just because of the pandemic, but I think there's been this gap for a long time. And so this period of lockdowns made me think about that more and how I can help those employers with staff who are maybe bereaved from COVID, but also just in life anyway. We're all gonna face loss at some point, and I think because I've got my HR training, coaching background, I felt like I could put all of that together and build that other branch into my business. So that's currently where I'm at with my work.
Yeah, sorry to hear about the loss of your father. I can imagine that was quite an emotional time for you.
Yes.
Do you feel that you've learnt a lot from that and stuff that you can sort of put yourself into people's positions and know how they feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, having lost, a few family members, I absolutely understand what people are going through with loss, and that's what really led me to write this course because I felt that there's so much that's misunderstood, and there's so many myths around grief, and lots around the difficulty of what people not knowing what to say. And I just thought I wanted to help people in that way to know how to maybe access support, and to find ways for themselves to cope. And a lot of the way of getting through grief is finding our own learning and coping mechanisms. And sometimes we don't know until maybe we're given some pointers and some direction in how we can do that. So yeah, absolutely. What I have been through has been very much my own sort of learning, and from that experience, I've used that along with my own research with other grief therapists and grief theory to really put something together that I believe can be really beneficial for people.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, that's going to be, advantageous. People, lots of bereavement coaches, no disrespect, but I can imagine they don't go through a lot of the experiences that they talk about. So it's very difficult to sort of empathize with the person that you're actually teaching. So having gone through it yourself has a big advantage. But certainly you can certainly empathize with the people that you're talking with. We talked about, well, you mentioned about businesses going through this same sort of dealing with their staff who are going through lots of trauma at the moment, on top of general life. I guess it would be good. What we can put in something at the end so that businesses can then get in touch with you. Is that, or so if they feel that they need to have some kind of external help, they can come and get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I very much hope that any organisation that may be struggling at the moment, maybe with someone who is taking some time off for bereavement, but also importantly, something else that I feel is important for organisations is to have in place something like a bereavement policy. Because what happens when somebody in their organisation has to take time off for bereavement, a lot of the time, what happens is people don't really know what to do, who to turn to. Managers don't know what to do. HR don't know what to do. So if there's no policy, nobody really knows how much time off that person should have, what paid leave they might be entitled to. That's another thing that people often ask about. What are bereavement payments and entitlements? And there is a new law that just came into place in April this year, which is parental leave for a child under the age of 18, 2 weeks parental leave. But aside from that, everything else is very much discretionary, down to the organisation what they want to do. So I do think organisations need guidance and to know what to do. But there's also other reasons for organisations to have in place something that's a little bit more solid and robust. And in some of the things that I've come across, and what I feel are reasons for an employer to have this training would be because staff feel so much more valued when they feel looked after by their employer. It can reduce stress, it can reduce anxiety, it can reduce sick leave, the amount of time that people need to take off, so hopefully they can return to work quicker. It maintains good working relationships and also keeps the workplace more productive. So I know it sounds in a way ridiculous to talk about, but besides the emotional benefits and the aspect of a duty of care that employers do have to their employees, and we can see that now with mental health, that's coming up more and more.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a business benefit as well. The bottom line is, to a business, there is a business benefit to having their employee who knows the job, who's trained by them, who is an asset to the company. They want to have them back at work and productive as soon as they can be. So there's the emotional aspect of it, of wanting to look after your staff member, but also there is a business benefit to organisations as well.
Definitely,
and knowing that they're doing the right thing as well, to be making sure you are following good practice.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to value your staff as much as your customers. If you don't have staff that are working well and looked after, then you just don't get the productivity from them.
Absolutely, 100%. And actually, there was some research carried out only last year with Sue Ryder, the charity that deals with the palliative and neurological care, end of life care. And their stats are actually quite alarming. They say only 9% of employees felt supported through
Yeah,
bereavement. That's a staggeringly low figure.
it is. Yeah,
We need to increase that figure, definitely. If people are feeling that way, it means they're going back to work possibly before they're ready to go back to work. They're also maybe in a role that isn't right for them anymore, because employers might need to consider job roles and functions and adapt them accordingly. So there's so many reasons why an employer should want to put that support into place for somebody who's a valued member of their team.
yeah. Well, talking about bereavement then, what would you say to someone who is grieving and unable to attend a loved one's funeral because they're forced to self-isolate?
Yeah, this is, I think, extremely difficult, and there's almost like no words to say to someone in that situation, because it's so difficult. I think that there are ways in which we can try to make this just a little bit more bearable for someone. And I think really what I wanted to say there was funerals are a very important part of the grieving process.
Yeah.
In terms of it being a ritual that people can plan, and it's like a formal goodbye to their loved one that they share with family and friends. So then to not be able to have that is really, really upsetting. So, but there are things I would suggest in this case, and I know some people are starting to do it. So it might be the possibility that you could have the funeral stream, so you could film the service.
Mm-hmm.
People are using Facebook Lives to do this, or maybe videos where you can play it back later. And I would say to somebody who is currently at home while the funeral is taking place, maybe you can set aside some time to have your own private goodbye or your memorial at home. So this might mean looking at pictures, play some of the person's favorite music. You could write them a message, light a candle, or just follow any of your own cultural rituals that make it feel that in some way, somehow, you are there with them at that moment. And I would say also in for those people, if there have been other family members or friends who have been able to attend, because obviously the numbers are very small, but a few people can attend with the social distancing. Ask them if they could call you afterwards to give you an account of the event. Take time to share your memories of the person with them. And then I would suggest maybe a time later on when lockdown is eased and we can relatively go back to something normal, that that could be a good time then to plan a proper memorial with family and friends where you can commemorate and celebrate that person's life together in the way that you would have done for a funeral.
Yeah, it's going to be weird having a delayed wake. I can imagine is going to have a take on a different ethos, I guess, because when you have your wake right after the funeral, you have a lot of raw emotions and that. So, but if you then wait 2 or 3 months and then have a wake, it's going to take on a completely different role. It's going to be a very different retrospective kind of look, isn't it?
Yeah, it will be. It won't be the same. And as I say, the importance of funerals as rituals are significant in the grieving process. And it's something that we expect to do for somebody. So to not be able to be there, to be present, and have that delayed, yes, I do think it can potentially cause problems. There may be delayed grief because of it. And I think for some people right now, there is delayed grief because of the pandemic anyway, because we're living in a fearful world at the moment, and there is a lot of anxiety around of what's going to happen next and how we're going to cope. And also we may be worried for our own safety of other loved ones. So I think some people may be feeling this whole thing of there are greater things at large right now than my own personal grief.
Yeah.
But I would say to anybody who's in that situation, never ever belittle what your grief is for you, and to try to find some way to express how you're feeling now. Don't wait for the memorial or the funeral or the service later on to be the time that you grieve. Do it now, and find people that can talk to you, that you can call, you can share. And obviously there's a lot of social media contact now. Do connect with family and friends right now, because you do need their support. And I know that people are struggling with their own personal issues as well, so people may not be as available right now, but there are also some amazing online support groups where people are sharing their grief stories, and I have seen that there are also grief stories during the pandemic and because of it. So I'd say possibly, if that's something that you think will help, try and join some of these online groups. I know that crews are still working their helplines. The government has set up the Good Samaritan scheme, where they are supporting people with phone calls, not so much for grief, but people that are struggling with being on their own. But absolutely, it's still, I say, a resource. And I have posted also on my Facebook page, I have said to anyone who is really struggling right now, if they need someone to talk to, please get in touch with me. I just really hate the idea of anybody struggling alone and they've got nobody to talk to and they want to talk to someone. So please get in contact with me as well. And the other thing I think I would say here is, whereas before, in normal times of grieving, there are so many great support groups around, so many organizations that offer specialized grief support, actually. And obviously a lot of that isn't available right now because we're isolating. But one thing I think is important, so as I say, reach out to people where you can, but also don't forget, try and look after yourself as well. And that means do things that make you feel as well as you possibly can in this period. So try to rest, try to sleep well. Don't overwatch the news, because that can really affect anxiety levels. So it might be once a day, check in, of course, see what's going on. I understand everyone wants to know what's going on in the world, but don't read everything you see. There's a lot of fake news going around. Try to make sure you keep hydrated. It's important. We actually forget not drinking enough water can actually make us feel depressed, and we can associate or we can rather disassociate that fact. So keep hydrated, try to eat just small portions of nutritious food if you can, get fresh air if you're able to go out, or at least sit in the garden, get some fresh air every day, or at least have your windows open in your house. So do what you can do to support yourself in this difficult time, and reach out where you can when it feels, if you feel you want to talk to someone, try to reach out to different groups, and maybe use this time to practice some journaling techniques as well. So get writing, or find some other creative outlet, something that allows you to express yourself in a way that you allows you to at least sort of to cope with some of those emotions of grief that you might be feeling right now. So my point is, don't wait. You don't need to wait until the memorial service to grieve. Then start doing it now. The sooner you start, in a way, the better.
Yeah, you do need to. I mean, I've just, funny enough, I've just started doing an art journaling course, filming for someone else who's actually making them. And that's proving quite popular. So, there are courses and things out there, so for people to try these activities and things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, and I do say that to people as well. It's when grief catches you, maybe unawares, or maybe something you thought was you predicted that person was going to die soon. But the issue is you're in a situation where, if you've never experienced grief before, gosh, it throws you off balance. Yeah. And when you're in a time like that in your life, you might need to do something differently. And I think So I do try to say that to people. Maybe you've never done something before, but maybe it is the right time to try something new now, because you don't know what's going to work for you and what's going to help. So, but whilst I say I do mention a lot about sort of making lists about what helps you and what doesn't help you, but I do try to suggest to keep an open mind at least to something new. Maybe you've never done it before. For example, maybe meditation is something you've never done before, and you don't know how to do it. But if you're suffering with a lot of anxiety with your grief, then actually that could be something that could help you to follow a meditation sequence, or it might be easier with somebody talking, telling you what to do, or a guided relaxation journey. But yeah, just keep an open mind as to what might help you right now.
Yeah, just something different as well. Just
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
takes you a change from your normal routine as well.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Julia, what would you say to someone who's having to support someone who's actually in the process of grieving at the moment?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm glad you asked me, because so many people um, talk about feeling helpless actually when they see that their loved one is struggling with a bereavement. And again, I think this goes back to this whole thing I mentioned earlier, that our culture is quite grief averse, so we never really know quite what to say. The biggest advice I can give to anyone here is just be yourself. Be loving, be kind, be patient, be compassionate and understanding. That is all anybody could ever ask from a friend, a relative in their grief. Just be yourself. Um, you don't need to be clever and come up with reasons why you thought the person may have died. And what I hear an awful lot of, and I also experience it myself, is the empty platitudes. And I have to say, they are the worst thing that somebody can hear. The things like, it was meant to be, they're in a better place. And I know people mean well by
Yeah.
that. I know the intention is good, but it doesn't come across like that to the griever. It comes across as insensitive, uncaring, and like you're trying to fix them. And I think that is the biggest thing I can say to somebody is, do not try to fix somebody else's grief, because you can't. It's not fixable. In time, hopefully that person will heal and they will move forward. Moving forward does not mean to say that you move on and you forget about the person that you've loved, but in time, generally grief does get easier. So just be there with them on their journey with grief. Be there to support them the whole way. Sometimes you can't say anything at all, and sometimes, and I know we can't do this right now, but a hug, a touch of a hand says 1,000 words. um, Sometimes there are just no words that are needed. You just need to be there, you need to sit there. And right now that might mean maybe just phoning that person and offering comfort, rather than, as I say, trying to fix the problem or what they should be doing, how they should be maybe trying to make themselves feel better. Is just let them talk. Let them talk. Let them share their memories. Let them cry. Share your memories with them. Tell them the fun about the funny times you remember this person. Tell them around happy times, or just whatever it is. Just share your memories. And so just a few phrases I was thinking about for this that are more helpful to somebody are things like this: I don't know what to say to you right now, but I'm so sorry to hear this news. Or, I'm so sorry for your loss, you are in my thoughts. Or, he or she will be so missed, they were so special, you are in my thoughts. I wish I could be there with you right now to give you a hug. Now, that's much more comforting than trying to come up with some sort of, as I say, some clever comment, or what you think is a comforting phrase about them being in a better place, etc. Just try to, maybe if you can, put yourself in their shoes. Think about what you would want to hear if you were going through that yourself. And as I say, more just importantly, be yourself, be who you are. That's all they need from you right now. They don't need clever answers, and they don't need to be fixed. So just at the heart of it all, just be compassionate and show love. That's really all I can advise, just show love.
Yeah, that's some good advice. Right at the beginning, we did talk about businesses and the effects of dealing with the staff and the losses and bereavements of the employees. I mean, how can organisations support members of staff at this time?
Yeah. Okay. So I think there are things that employers can do, and such things that might include good practice could be, do absolutely offer your condolences. Assure the employee that they don't need to come to work if they don't want to right now, and that make it clear that work should be second for them. Ask them how they'd like to keep in touch. Now, I think this is really important. People sometimes assume, they don't check in with the person to see what works best for them. So ask them, do they want to keep in touch by phone, by email, by video? You don't know where that person is at right now. So just find out, just a simple question. Also ask if there's any important work they need someone else to cover, if appropriate. And then after the conversation, maybe follow up with an email or call them in a few days' time, just to keep the communication going, and try to remain calm, empathic, so that they feel supported, and you're trying to ease their anxiety about work or returning to work too early. So I would say, yeah, making sure you keep in touch with them when they are off. Checking in the first few days is important, and and simple questions like, how are they? How you doing? Also, they might want to ask about whether they want to let others in the team know about the death. I mean, I suppose at some point other people are going to hear about it.
Yeah.
So, but maybe the person who's bereaved wants to tell those people themselves. So ask them what they would like you to do. And if they may want to be contacted by their colleagues at work, so they can offer their support, condolences. Some people might like that, some people may not. So again, it's just about asking. Also, whether they need any information or support from you, and see if you can signpost them to any support that's available to them. And if they've thought about returning to work, what their thoughts might be on that, how they might like to come back into work. What I mean by that is some people may have a slower start back in, so they might come back part-time and then gradually increase their hours up to what they were doing before. Or there just may be some differences that they want. If it's, for example, a parent that's lost their spouse, they may have an issue of childcare. They may need to change working hours so they can get their children to school.
Yeah.
So, how can you best support that person?
Yeah.
So I think the thing is, have lots of open communication, and just try to be helpful as much as possible, and keep the communication lines open as well. That's really key. And then that way you can have a much better chance of having that employee coming back to work, feeling like they've been supported and feeling more ready to return to the workplace as well.
Yeah. Just following on from that, sort of coming back to work, do you have advice for businesses on how to gradually get employees back to work, obviously when all the restrictions have been lifted, for advice for employers how they would actually bring people back in, because it's not going to be something that's straightforward. You can't just let everyone return. I know they're talking about having staggered shifts and things like overlapping, so that not everybody's back at the same time, and sort of bringing people slowly back into the office.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that's going to be very much governed by the rules that our government are now deciding upon, and we will hear more about that very shortly. So I think the safety issues are the primary concern, and rightly they should be, about keeping people safe at work. So I think whatever instructions your employer has about that, from the employer's perspective, yeah, you've got to follow what the advice is on keeping people as safe as possible. So that's on a practical level. From an emotional level, what I would say to employers though is, for people that are returning, so you could almost compare what's happened in the world right now to some kind of a trauma for many people. This is something that we've never ever experienced before, and who knows, we'll ever experience it again in our lifetime. But none of us have actually been ready or equipped for this. So I think there is an emotional aspect of this that will affect employees, and I think employers should give people a space to talk. And I think whether the people have been bereaved or they've just been, as I say, partly traumatized from all of this, I think there should be opportunities for people's voices to be heard, for some well-being type of meetings, just to check in on people, see how they're doing. Does anyone need any extra support? What can that employer put in place? Just, you need to, the employers need to make sure that their teams are okay, and as much as can be, besides the practical aspects of looking after them, I do think there is a responsibility towards their emotional well-being. So I would say, yeah, make sure there are forums or some kind of way of allowing people to express how they've been feeling in lockdown, and express how they feel also about returning to the workplace as well.
Yeah. Something that I was quite interested in, I was listening to Russell Howard, and he had a birthday, well, about a month ago, and his girlfriend had organised a surprise holiday, and obviously that then got cancelled, and it obviously was no longer a surprise. But the irony was that he was then the person that had to go and cancel everything. He had to go through the process of actually cancelling the flights and the hotels and everything, and getting the money back. And you could see he was absolutely devastated by that process, and that just sort of, everyone's going to be grieving about everything at the moment. And it's not just loss of people and friends and restrictions. There's just going to be so many. It's just going to be the little bit of things that are out there that are going to cause so much grief, isn't there?
Absolutely. I actually did write an article on this, because when we first went into lockdown, I felt immediately there were two things. I was thinking about people that are suffering with grief during this time and how difficult that's going to be for them. But I also really felt the collective loss that people are feeling. So people that have never experienced the loss of a loved one, but they are experiencing this overwhelming feeling of loss of everything they have known to be normal their whole life, their work, schools. I have to admit, actually, when I picked up my son on the last day of his school, and it was his last year of primary, I actually had tears in my eyes, and I couldn't stop myself. I was so upset that he probably wouldn't go back to school, and that was it for him. Primary school was over, without all the parties and end of year trips. So there's collective loss is everywhere. This sense of we've all been robbed of our lives, and that, as you say, that's in the simple things, holidays, not being able to see our friends, our families. I mean, it's a huge loss. Just going out for the day, the simple things we've lost, and it's really hard for people to grasp that. And so I thought about that, and I also realized with a lot of that comes anticipatory fear. So because people are experiencing this kind of overwhelming loss for the first time in their lives, in some cases, what happens with that is there's also a fear of what's to come next. So there's a sense of a lack of control in their life, because now suddenly everything is out of control.
It's almost like an existential anxiety, isn't it?
Absolutely. A feeling that, will life ever be the same again? And although we hope very soon to hear about some restrictions being lifted, we know it's been said that until there's a vaccine, nothing is ever really going to be quite normal again for us. And that is quite something to hear. We weren't expecting this a few months ago. Nobody could have predicted this. And then all of a sudden, we have to deal with this. Now we're seeing it called the new norm. And it is like a new norm. Going out with a mask on is the new norm. And it's like something out of a bad movie. So there's a huge amount of collective loss, and I think people need to recognise that is loss. And I know we don't have time to go into it now, but I would say something to look at is there is a change curve that is a useful theory that's helpful for understanding the impact of loss and stages of grief that we go through. And I think people are going through those stages, even in terms of loss, in terms of what we just talked about here. So yeah, absolutely, it's everywhere. And I think, again, it comes down to being compassionate to ourselves and to others. We're all in different places as well in this loss. Some are accepting it easier than others, and some have had an easier time of it than others in lockdown. You know, if you've got a nice big house and your job's secure, that's very different from having your income taken away from you, living in a flat with 3 kids, no garden. It's a very different experience. So
yeah, I mean, that's a term that's been bandied around, that we're all in the same boat. We're not actually. We're all in the same sea. But we're all in different boats.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something people need to realise. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we need to be sensitive and understanding of the impact of what this is like for people that are really, really struggling. And yeah, it's about being compassionate in those situations, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the last day of school, and that's something I think people forget, that there is a normal rite of passage throughout your child's development and schooling and life, where there are sort of key moments that are expected. So things like say, when you finish primary school, you've got the awards ceremonies, and you've got the sort of the final activities, games days and stuff like that, sports days and that. And then you go to the big school, because then you'd have the transference, so you have the integration to go to see the big school, and then you get to the end of school, and then you have proms and leaving dues, and you know, it's the last couple of months before you then separate and go to universities, and you're probably never going to see those people again, you know. So have you got any advice for sort of parents how to sort of deal with that with children?
It's so sad. It is just really, really sad, because you're absolutely right. It's a key moment in a child or as an adolescent's life that is, it feels like it's been stolen from them, literally just been grabbed out of their hands. They'll never have those same memories to look back on. You know, the memories of leaving school will be lockdown, and it does upset me, because so many children are experiencing this, and obviously worse still for those children who can't do their GCSEs because of all the work they've put in, and the sort of feeling of the disappointment, huge disappointment, in them not being able to see through their exams. It's yeah. I mean, I suppose what certainly for us, what we're doing in our parent group, and we're quite a close group of mums, we have said whatever happens with school, whether they go back or not, we are going to arrange, when it's safe to do so, a party for our children, so that they get a final time to say goodbye to each other. And I don't quite know how we're going to do that yet, what theme or it might take, but to at least it's something. It's the marker of their time together. They've been how many years at school together? 7 years at school, at primary school, and we feel we have to mark it in some way, because these children will all be going to different schools. Some will the same, but they will be splitting up, and also we hope to invite the teachers as well. That's another aim of ours. So
because they'll want to go through the same process as well, won't they?
Everyone together for one big party. I mean, they're not going to have the weekends the way that was planned, and they're not going to have the end of school plays. We can't capture that, but what we can do is one great big party. To say goodbye to each other, and at least they've got something. There is something there that finalises and marks the end of that era. So I would say that to other parents, if they're able to, work something out with that year group, with other parents, and see, is there something that you can do with them to have some gathering, some party of some sort, when it's safe to do so so that the children do get a chance to say goodbye to their peers, and to get the teachers involved as well, because I think the teachers are really sad. It's not. It is one thing is the kids, but I really do think the teachers feel sad about it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's contrary to popular belief, but teachers do actually like the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I really felt it from my son's teacher, and I thought, oh God, if I start crying, she's going to start crying.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's. I do think that would be my suggestion. Try to do something where you mark. If it's just a one-day event, so be it. But they'll have that at least to take forward with them as they can move forward in their lives.
Well, moving forward is definitely the sort of the main thing now. Is there something positive for the future, do you think?
Well, I hope so. I very much hope so. And I think without hope, there is no purpose almost. What are we striving for? So I think one thing to hold on to is, as awful as it is right now, it will at some point end. We have to remember that. I mean, it may be a year, 2 years, we don't know, possibly when there is a vaccine, when we can finally feel safe again. But it will change, and certainly, as we're seeing in Italy right now, the restrictions are being lifted and families are being reunited, albeit very, very slowly. But we're not going to stay in lockdown forever. So try to remember that this moment won't be forever. It will change, and it will get better again. But I do think there's been a lot of talk about the pausing and the reflecting in this moment, because we've been forced to stop. So we're all sort of reevaluating our lives. We're all working from home, families spending more time together. And I know I'm not being all sort of rosy and jolly about that. But it's hard for some families, I know that.
Yeah.
And we're hearing horrific cases of domestic abuse. So it's not all lovely rose-tinted glasses for everyone. But I'm gonna speak just in the main here, that a lot of people have enjoyed is the wrong word to use, but people have sort of stopped to reflect on what's important in their life, I would say.
They've kind of had an opportunity to reflect on different ways of living.
Yeah, absolutely. Different ways of living, which is kind of, I think, important, because it's something that we would never normally have had time to do. We're so busy running around in our lives that we don't have time to stop and think and reflect, just to think, actually, is this really what I want to be doing? Do I want to be doing this job where I'm traveling an hour, 2 hours in the morning and in the evening, and I've come home exhausted, I can't enjoy my children? So I think people are stopping to reflect. I mean, we're seeing amazing things happen with the planet. Like, it's healing, it's recovering. So do we really want to go back to flying so many planes and traveling in our cars and damaging the planet as it was? Can we really do that and justify it now? And I think it's just sort of, and people are becoming more self-sufficient. They've got more time to cook, to do gardening, and these are the kind of the basic things in life that people are really beginning to enjoy again.
Yeah.
And I think they've always been there, but we just haven't had time to do them. So my hope, and it really, really is my hope, that a little bit of this, what we've gone through right now, stays with us. Let's cling on, and let's hold on to that, and let's do something with that, something positive, where we say, okay, look, thankfully we're going to get normality back at some point, and we can get our lives back. But let's not totally eradicate what we've been through as meaningless, as pointless, and just a really bad episode. It is an awful episode, and cannot deny that. But I think the creating more meaning out of our lives, if there was one thing to gain out of this all, I'd say let it be that. Let us make some positive changes, and let us keep to those changes. I really hope people aren't blasé about it and just go back to all same old behaviours as before, and nothing shifts, or there's no change in our thinking and in our consciousness. I hope that we can retain a little bit of this, what people are experiencing, and because when something awful happens, and this is actually in the stages of loss, the last stage after acceptance, actually meaning, what can we make of all this that is meaningful and can change our life? And that is what I really hope that people will do with this experience, make something positive come from the devastation that's been caused by it, and let there be some positive lasting changes.
Definitely. Right, well, thank you very much. It's been wonderful to listen to you, and hopefully people can take something from there. There's a lot of information. They can come and find you on your website and Facebook pages as well, and you've got courses that you've got lined up as well. So you've got a lot of stuff out there now, and a lot of stuff to come. So we'll put links onto your Facebook page with this as well, so they can find you. But it's been lovely to talk to you.
Likewise, David. Really enjoyable. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's been great to be able to talk about my work, and because I have felt right now it's been really pertinent actually, and that's why I sort of felt a need to get writing straight away, and there's so much I wanted to say about it. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Really appreciated.
All the best with the course, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Take care.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.